So whether you are a beginning gardener or a pro, this video is going to help you get started for your spring garden. It's the beginning of January, and do you know what's heavy on my mind? Some of you that are still buried under 12 inches of snow might think I'm crazy, but what has been weighing on my mind the most in the last several days and weeks is gardening. One of the very first steps to a successful garden is definitely coming up with a plan. And that plan starts with, what are you gonna grow this year? Is it gonna be peas and carrots, tomatoes and peppers, kale and collards? The possibilities are endless. So what I am going to challenge you to do is to start your list. Start it now while you have the time, because once this season starts rolling, you're going to be too busy growing, planting, harvesting, and weeding to worry about coming up with a list. So while it's the sleepy, cozy, cold month of January, get your list started. So get out a piece of paper and a pen right now. I'll give you a minute to find it. Alright, so you got that pen and paper? Now what I need you to do is to start writing down everything from the produce department at your grocery store that you buy. If you buy at the grocery store or the farmer's market, write it down. Ask every member of your family what their favorite vegetable to eat is. Look at what is on your menu every night and write down those vegetables. If it's something that you have more than twice a week, make note of that. If it's something that you buy in cans or frozen, make note of that. The goal here is to determine what you actually need to grow. Not just what you want to grow, but what is your family going to consume? Because you're going to get so much more pleasure out of growing your garden if you have grown the things that everybody gobbles up. For our family, it's hands down tomatoes. That's why I grow 500 tomato plants every year. Didn't grow that many last year, only grew 37 last year, and they didn't do so well. So last year was not a good example. Many of you that have been with me for a while know that the last 2 years have been my worst growing years ever because I haven't been well, and I've had a lot of other obstacles besides my health that I've dealt with. But this year, everything is just going to fall into place, and we're gonna have an amazing garden again. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to sharing with you guys and helping you narrow down your seed list. So I want you to add a few flowers to that seed list. Flowers and herbs are very important to incorporate into your vegetable garden. They help attract pollinators to your garden, and they make it beautiful. So if you totally don't know what to start with, just start with some marigolds and basil. Now, I want you to add something fun to your list. Whether it's purple broccoli or loofah gourds. No matter what it is, I just want you to try something new, something totally outside of your comfort zone, or just a really unique plant that you've been dying to try, because you should always experiment in gardening. So now you have your list and you are so excited to grow all the things. But how many do you grow? How do you narrow down your list and decide which ones are the most important? So now that you have your list, you need to make sure that the ones that you eat the most are at the top of that list. You need to make sure that the ones that your family enjoys the most is at the top of that list. Liam, what's your favorite vegetable to grow in the garden?
Strawberries.
Strawberries, that's a great one. And do you like the tomatoes?
Yeah.
And what about carrots?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love them when they are not cooked too.
You love them when they're not cooked in two. What about you, Rowan? What is your favorite vegetable to grow?
Like carrots, because when they're cold, because that I like when they're sweet when they are cold inside of a fridge.
Oh, that sounds yummy. Anything else?
Yeah, like strawberries. I mean, is that fruit?
It's a fruit. We grow it in our vegetable garden though. That's another thing to keep in mind, is you can add fruit to your vegetable garden. Don't be afraid to experiment. So a big thing to consider is the volume per plant. If you plant something like zucchini or summer squash or cucumber, you're gonna get a ton of fruit off of just one plant. So you need to keep that in mind. You also need to keep in mind how much space each plant takes up. Some things are big like squash and tomatoes and take up a lot more room in your garden. So if you don't have a lot of space to plant, you're gonna need that space for other things. Whereas other things like carrots and beets and radish take up very little space and you can grow more of them. So choose wisely on space as well as volume. Another thing to take into consideration is your gardening abilities. Do you have time to put a lot of effort and pruning and maintenance into a very needy plant? Or is it something that's hard to grow? Maybe a beginning gardener shouldn't start out with Brussels sprouts, because even us pros have a hard time getting those sprouts to form. And then what is your regional growing like? If you are up north and you have very cold weather and a very short growing season, you may not be able to grow things like ginger and turmeric and sugarcane that I can grow down here in Georgia. So also take that into consideration. Also, the reverse is the same. If you live in Florida, you might not be able to grow lettuce very well in the middle of the summer. But definitely pay attention to your zones, and I have some great information about how to find your zone. I'm going to leave a link down below, and then you know your planting zone. I also have other links that I'll be leaving down below as well that'll help you with all of the things we've talked about today. Another big question I get a lot of the time is, are there plants that I shouldn't buy from the store and that I should just go ahead and plant directly as seed into the ground? Absolutely. So if you're able to start seed early, there are some things that are definitely recommended that you start early. And then there are some things that are much easier if you just direct sow them into the ground. So figuring out which ones of those is going to really help you expand and do better in your gardening levels. I'm going to be putting out a spreadsheet very soon about your spring seed starting guide, and in this seed starting guide you'll be able to put your frost free date into the equation, and it will calculate when you should be starting your seeds indoors. And then I will also note which ones I direct sow myself. So I'm a big direct sower. If I can direct sow it, then I do. My summer crops that I like to start as seeds early on are going to be tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants. That's pretty much it. Tomatillas, if you're doing tomatillas. So anything in the nightshade family basically is needing a little bit of an extra head start because they are from more tropical regions. The spring plants that I highly recommend starting in advance from seed or buying them as starts, same with the tomatoes and peppers, etc. You can buy them as starts if you can't start them from seed, is going to be your cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, broccoli. If you get those started early or you buy them as starts, they're gonna do much better. Sowing those seeds in the garden does not work as well. So those are the ones that are on the top of my list that you should start from seed or buy starts from. And then the other thing that comes into this equation is varieties. There's so many varieties of each one of those. You can get 3 different types of broccoli. You can get 4 different types of cauliflower. So make sure that you narrow your list down so that you can experiment a little bit with your variety. So for some of you, the next step is starting your seeds. I think I'm gonna have to make a separate video for that. Some of the things that I include as imperative for starting seeds is grow lights and heating pads for starting peppers, eggplants, and tomatoes. They all need heat. And because this room is not heated, this is just a tack room in the barn, I'm gonna have to use the heat mats for even my cabbage and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and broccoli, because it needs to stay warm enough for them to germinate. So whether your garden is buried under the snow, whether you're up in New England or down in the Southwest, remember, no matter what state you're in, that your winter garden may be asleep right now. Some people are lucky and have vibrant gardens in Florida, in Southern California. But others in Missouri and Arkansas, their gardens have fallen asleep. And now it is time to plan your garden for the spring. Even when the garden is sleeping, we can still garden in our minds. The planning, the figuring out what we're gonna grow, where it's gonna go, can be some really fun time in the winter. All right, I've got my list. I filled both sides of the page. But we've got a lot of space to work with here, so we should be able to fit it all in somehow. My big problem is then I want to grow more than one variety of each of these things on my list. I've been known to grow 50 different varieties of heirloom tomatoes in 1 year. So yes, it will be a challenge. So now that you have your seed list there before you and you know what you are going to grow this year, now it's time to take a look at your seed collection. Look and see what seeds you already have that are on that list. Try to go through your seed first before ordering new seed, but sometimes that's not as easy to do as it is to say. I know, I'm guilty of it. But if you already have some corn seed, maybe try to grow that corn seed this year and try a new variety next year. But if you really must have to, then I understand. Order that Indian corn that you've been dying to try. But who do you order from? What seed company is really going to be the correct seed company for you to use? I've got some special tips on that too. Perhaps one of the biggest challenge for people is trying to decide which seed companies to order from. There are a few basic requirements that I personally have for ordering my seed. Personally, I like to choose one that has chosen to do the Safe Seed Pledge. And that means that I know that they are not genetically modified. As most of you know, you cannot buy GMO seed unless you're a full-fledged farmer that's planting fields of a crop. That's the only way to get GMO seed is in bulk. So it is not necessarily about whether non-GMO seed are better or not, but then you come into play with whether or not you want to save seed. If you want to save seed from your crop that you're growing, you're going to want to go with heirloom. Hybrids are really great for the garden in many ways because of their vigor and growth, but they're not going to be true to seed if you do save the seed. You could end up with some unique things though. So, not saying not to save the seed from hybrid, but just don't count on it being exactly what you grew. And then, of course, the discussion of organic versus conventional. Do you have to buy organic seed? Tough call. I typically aim for organic seed, but not always. There are some companies that I trust more than I trust the organic label, if that makes sense. Two examples of those are going to be Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds and MI Gardener. So I know that they are choosing safe seed because they're companies that I have either used for years or I have met personally and know them and trust them. So that narrows down our seed choices. It's a lot to think about. There's a lot invested in it. I'm going to post some of my blog articles in the description down below that will help you go into further detail on these things, and they also provide links to where you can find out how to see if a company is on the Safe Seed Pledge. I will be making a video about starting my seed. I will also be making a video about garden planning, things like site selection, what kind of gardens to build, and what kind of soil do you use. So make sure you check out these next couple of videos that we're going to have in this series. I will make a separate playlist for them, and hopefully it'll be beneficial for some of you that are just starting your garden, or even for you pros that have been gardening for a while. There might be some new tips here for you. I want to say a big thank you to all the channels that participated in sending me some clips of their gardens. I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that gardening can be different all across the country and all across the world even. And I wanted people to understand that it doesn't matter what season it is. There's always a season to garden, even in the winter. So get your planner out, get your notes ready. We're gonna have more things coming up in the future for you guys. We've got the seed spring starting spreadsheet. We've got some great blog articles that are gonna lead you to some wonderful links to help you plan out your garden. And we're gonna have much more to come. Thank you guys for watching. Please like, share, comment down below if you have any questions at all. And we'll see you next time on Wholesome Roots.